Ooh, I like that.
Welcome to the first ever Paranormal Now Geek Sessions, which is really just a spin-off of our previous Roundtable Star Wars sessions. I'm Alan B. Smith, the host of Paranormal Now, and I have guests Camille-Bettina Atkinson, Macadelic, a.k.a. Mac Barnes, the Encyclopedia of Star Wars, and my good friend Andrew Gregory, who is also another prolific fan and host of knowledge of Star Wars as well. So I'm going to just jump right into this. Listeners are probably familiar with all three of you if they've listened to the other roundtable sessions. So, one, we have a lot of things to tackle here. I think we're all really frustrated with the potential direction of Star Wars. Camille and I, we haven't actually talked too much about this, but I know that Mac and Andrew and myself have some issues. Overall, I liked The Last Jedi. I thought it was a good sci-fi film. But was it a good Star Wars film? And what are we going to do with Rian Johnson? And what has he done to Star Wars? Camille, how do you feel about Rian Johnson?
I don't think George Lucas was that great.
Ooh, okay. I heard a lot of pangs out in the universe right now.
Well, I know, but people make mistakes and they're horrible and stupid and they're fallible, and that's why we like drama, because it constructs those things so that we can point fingers and go, that's the reason.
True, yeah.
That's what we like. That's why we like Star Wars. Those are the bad guys. Those are the good guys. Real life is not like that.
Well, fair enough. For the original series, the Ewoks were an issue for a lot of people and still are.
Hey, man, listen, don't talk about my people. Don't talk about my people.
There you go. See? And I'm with you on that one. But the story arc in the original trilogy was solid. Do you feel like The Last Jedi really kind of...
I feel like this is what I think. I think it's turning, that the kind of storytelling that's being done is changing a little bit. Because we had this structure of the Joseph Campbell, and we're still following that. It's almost like Zelda, where every episode is exactly the same story. It's really the same story. And they repeat it in cycles of 3, which is what's implied in the trilogies, right?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
And then, so this one is like the, was it Return of the Jedi? Empire Strikes Back. This is like the Empire Strikes Back of our generation. It seems like it just goes on, and it's one plot line. That's what's frustrating. Is it only had this one plot line, and then everything else was like intrapersonal, which is a bit far-reaching for a science fiction movie, especially one that's generally speaking aimed towards kids and toy collectors.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't go to Star Wars for drama. But I do go to see, like, campy, like, Sith Lord robe drama with, like, what is that noise? Is that drool, or is it just evil? Like, that's what I go for. But I'm an idiot, and I know that I like cheese.
Well, I mean, I think Mac has defended, Kylo Ren. But, I mean, Kylo Ren definitely has that, like, melodramatic cheese. Like, there's no doubt about that.
I haven't shown you Max Pleasure's acts yet. There's a burlesque performer, a trans guy named Max Pleasure. 3 X's.
Does he look like Mac?
You have to check this on the Instagram. A person I was working with on another show was like, that is a beautiful person. Is that a male person or a female person? And I was like, that is the hottest trans guy in burlesque right now.
That's great.
It's a Kylo Ren act.
Does he have like the high-waisted pants?
He's got like a grade school, a grammar school composition book, and he's writing in his diary, and he gets very angry and rips all the pages out.
But that's Kylo Ren. It makes sense.
Yeah.
So
someone used my Garnier.
Overall as a film, amongst the other Star Wars films, where does Last Jedi land in ranking?
Well, okay. See, they all come in at different cinematic levels for me.
Mhm.
So it's
Well,
hard.
give her the numbers. How many has there been so far? So like,
There's
Well, there's
8.
been-
number one is going to be the best. So it's going to be eight. Eight is going to be the worst at this point.
I would say that this is like a good 5. I don't hate it. And the reason why I don't hate it is that, yeah, it's like you were saying, we were talking the other day, Alan, that you never get to see enough of Luke, right? Okay,
Right.
yes, we
Yeah.
never get to see enough of anyone in these movies, ever. And one of the reasons why is because the cast is so big and they have
Mhm.
so much plot, and because the place in which it's taking place is outer space, so it requires all of this exposition. How do we get there? How does money work? Who are the people who live there? How do they, are they a part of the Alliance, or are they a part of the Rebellion? There's so much exposition that goes on.
Yeah.
You don't really have a lot of time for, juicy stuff.
Yeah.
An aspect of entertaining is if people leave going, I wanted to see more, then you have their money.
Mac?
Dude, that Max Pleasure guy looks like Russell Brand.
Did you just
Yes. Yeah.
look it up?
I'll check him out on Instagram. Like,
So cute.
to look that much like a female.
Dude, you already have your Halloween costume ready to go then. You're good.
Absolutely. You should see his Kylo Ren act. It's really funny. So you have to come up to the city.
That's really funny.
So getting back to one of the things that I really want to talk about is the Rian Johnson thing, because so many fans are divided and like ticked off. I mean, some are kind of like in the middle. And if I had to make a guesstimation, I would say 2/3 of the Star Wars fans are either hating it or unsatisfied but still liked the film, and maybe 1/3 really liked it, which is not good for the financial future of the Star Wars franchise.
For sure.
I think I said it best last show, Alan. If you're a true fan, you didn't like it. If you're a casual fan, you probably liked it.
Right. Well, that's why I say it's a good sci-fi film.
Every
Yeah.
true fan that I know did not like the movie. Everyone I know that I know is an actual true fan and can talk Star Wars. Not a single one of them liked the movie.
I second that, because me and Andrew we talked about it like right after it came out. I remember that. And historically, I've been on the show with you and Andrew. This is our 4th time, the three of us. So
You're better than me, buddy.
I've had multiple discussions with Andrew, and there's some stuff that he says that I don't agree with, like that we've had in the past, and vice versa. But like we really just both we agreed straight off the bat, last time, about not liking episode 8.
Yeah, you don't have to have a lightsaber duel over this.
But wait, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why didn't you like it?
You want to go first, Andrew?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So I would say number one, it was completely than part 7. Whereas, like you said earlier, you're talking about a trilogy.
Mhm.
The trilogies all follow a certain way. They should all follow a certain blueprint. You're not writing the story as you go along. If you're going to do it that way, you're not going to get a good story. You're not going to get a good product. If we're talking about the original Holy Trilogy, when Empire came out, it was a different director, but he did it right because he followed George's blueprint that he had for the 3 movies, plus more, obviously, that George had.
Mhm.
But he followed it. Ryan did not stick to the blueprint at all. I really don't like how he handled the classic characters. He did his version of Star Wars, and I really feel that, I understand you have to add new characters. I get that. And I guess Disney's giving him his own trilogy with his own characters, and that's fine. But don't mess with the classic characters.
Yeah.
I really don't like how they handle Luke at all.
We
We waited
Wait,
to see
Andrew?
Luke kick ass,
Andrew?
and Luke didn't do anything.
I want to know, what do you mean by messing with the classic characters?
Luke
What do you mean
Skywalker.
mess?
That's not Luke Skywalker at all. That
Okay.
how it
Okay, as a performer, are you a performer? Do you act too, I assume?
yes, sir. I absolutely
Okay.
do.
Okay, so when George Lucas asked Mark Hamill to do the old Hermit act way back in 1980, He actually was on like Dick Cavett, if you can imagine, and he said, "Would you mind coming back to do another film after all the first three were done?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I want you to play sort of an old hermit, sort of a Obi-Wan Kenobi character." And he was like, "Okay, great. When do you want to do it?" And he said, "About 2006." So if you want to talk about a blueprint, I don't think you can get that much far away from it than that.
An Obi-Wan character would be great.
Wait.
He wasn't an Obi-Wan character at all.
All of the Jedi Masters failed. All of them wind up going into obscurity. All of them wind up fading into the woods. And when you are older and you learn that what you know isn't enough, and you didn't teach your students enough, and you didn't even grow, because if I hear one more of my students say, "When I grow up and I have it all together," I'm going to be honest with them. I do not have it all together. I am more fucked up now, but I can control it better. And I think Luke, that's his natural arc, that he went to that place. He always seethed with a kind of anger, and it never worked for him. It always fucked him over in the end. And if he was alone on that island for generations, imagine how the continuity of that energy would grow inside of him like a giant pit. I can see that happening because I'm a teacher. And I want my students to surpass me, but I don't want them to hate me when they do. And they almost always do.
Yeah, but we didn't get to see Luke teach anyone anything. We've only heard about it. And in seven, in the flashbacks, you see that he taught all these Knights of Ren, and like all of those flashback scenes were awesome. It was raining, like the big betrayal scene was really, really cool, and like I was really looking forward to seeing what that was all about. Then along comes 8, and the director threw all of that out. The Knights of Ren aren't even there; they're not even mentioned. It's not even raining in the flashback. The way they shot it is terrible.
I know, but
It doesn't add anything to the story.
How long is the movie? What, 2 hours?
It's way too long. It's way too long.
That's not the point. For 3 hours, did you think about your electric bill?
I know, but I definitely checked my phone more than once.
That's my point. My point is, when I hear people say things like true fan and stuff like that, that just alienates people who might enjoy the movie from ever seeing it. And I want people to see it because I think that the stories that are in it are enriching on so many levels. When I was a little kid, I would never... Star Wars was so important to me. I was 2. My mother had to hold the seat down.
Because but I'm not talking about those movies. I'm only talking about 8.
Talking about these movies have to hit different people on different levels. And you grow to love them or you just... It's not your thing. But...
You don't have to like them all. You don't have to like them all.
I'm not saying that, but I don't consider like the first 3 the Holy Trilogy because the kids I raised during the mid-90s and early 2000s, that's not the first movie they saw. They like the Jar Jar Binks one, believe it or not, because you know what? That was actually built. I'm serious. I know, but it's just like, I hear people say things about, and we should critique. I agree, we should critique, but when people say things that are like, we expected this to happen because of this and because we're fans, I don't make art for fans. I make art because I'm making art, and if people come to it and like it, that's great. But if my concert career was like I was just a karaoke machine where people just told me what to sing all the time and that's what I did, no one would enjoy that. There has to be some danger and some edginess to drama. There has to be some disappointment. It's like life. If it doesn't hurt you, if it doesn't stun you, if it doesn't make you embarrassed, you don't remember and you don't learn. So yeah, these characters do have to screw us over sometimes because that makes you think, well, what would I have done in that situation? What would I have done as a storyteller in that situation? That's to grow your mind.
Well, see, my guess is the middle ground is probably the fact that a lot of people would have been more okay with Luke going out the way he did were he given more screen time. If we were just, even if you just kept the same exact plot and story, if you just allowed us, you've got Mark Hamill only once in a lifetime. you know, and if you kill him off, there's no bringing him back. You know, so if we'd have just seen him do the training, fight in the real world, really, you know, be a Jedi Master to Rey, then I think that would have been more satisfying.
Oh, of course. But listen, once they get going with some characters like Rey and Luke had really great chemistry. I mean, I wanted to slap them both during all of their conversations. Just get it together, you guys. But when they have that kind of energy, they never let go. So there's gonna be some iteration of it where we get to see them, you know, like some sort of Sandman version where he's like dead and teaching her things. There's gonna be that. We're gonna get that. The director's cut isn't out yet.
Yeah, well, we didn't see. It's funny you mentioned the director's cut,
Oh
but
my,
we
I
didn't
was
get to
thinking
see.
the same.
We didn't get to see any of that.
God.
But no, go ahead, Mike. What we're gonna say about the director's cut?
Oh man, nah, Andrew's gotta hit that one because Andrew was about to go in. I saw the look on his face as soon as she said director's cut.
Is this like?
This is my thing though. Like, just to finish my original thought about it's a completely different movie than Seven. Just look at how Hux is Just look at how they handled Hux. In Seven, he is honestly like this Hitler type character. He gives like this Hitler type speech, and 8 comes around. He's a joke in 8. He's a joke. He's literally a punching bag. He's literally the butt of a joke in every scene. The director clearly look at what happened to Phasma. She's an afterthought, and he did not know how to handle the Star Wars universe. He does not have a good grasp of it whatsoever.
Don't you think though that the Hux thing? I thought that the Hux thing was sort of like a Trump thing. That he was scary and gross, but people were joking about him, which is the situation that was going on in Austria with Hitler and with us now.
Well, I think the difference between the original trilogy is even though there were parallels between the Nazis.
He's handled in 8.
Yeah, I mean, in the original.
Just talking about how the actor is, how his performance is, and everything that he did.
Right. Yeah. So the original trilogy, yes, there is allegory with democracy and tyranny and Nazis, but it's not real world specific. So I think Andrew makes a good point. Even though I laughed. You know, he said, "Can you hear me now?" I laughed, but it didn't feel right in Star Wars. You know, it felt like it was too much of a pop reference. You know.
You know what? It was too Mel Brooks.
Right.
It was almost like they cut into a scene they dropped from Spaceballs.
From Spaceballs, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it felt too much.
Yeah. Well, maybe they were trying to toy with having the comic relief be a person as opposed to an animated. Whatever.
Well, okay, I'll say this, and what I'll do is after I say this, I'll splice this into our video edit.
Disobedient, disrespectful, traitor!
You call for order. You beat us down. But when your shiny neck was threatened, you squealed like a whoop hog. The evidence blew up at the base, but you and I know the truth. When I put a gun to your head, you shut down Starkiller shields. Now, what would your troops do if they found out? Or your masters?
Who would believe a story like that?
You were always scum.
Rebel scum.
The outtake of the Finn scene, and Phasma.
Dope.
I was much closer to where you are, Camille, in your feeling of the film until I saw that outtake, and I became furious. Like,
what happened? What did I see?
It was a beautiful showdown scene, that they and speech by Finn between Phasma and Finn. I mean, it was the most Star Wars
The
scene
best
out of the
acting he
whole
did in the
movie.
whole movie.
And he cut
Finn
it
was
because
horrible
he
in
said
the
it was
whole movie,
pacing issues.
except for this scene.
Like, how could you do that? Just cut the
Yeah.
casino out. Cut 5 minutes out of the casino.
Do you
Oh
remember
my
that
gosh.
movie, The Gray, with Liam Neeson?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
This whole movie was about them fucking around in the woods and whatever, blah 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 blah. And the ad for the movie was him like getting ready to fight this wolf with his bare hands. It was like Taken but with wolves.
That's what it got all started, though.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! The last shot of the movie, he's standing there, bottles strapped to his hands, broken bottles strapped to his hands, and the wolf lunges at him, and then the screen goes black and it's over. So you go through that whole movie and you never get to see him fight the wolf. And the terrible thing is the footage exists
No, I thought they did it because of budget reasons.
of Liam Neeson fighting a wolf, and we're not allowed to see it.
Please tell me it was the guy in the suit. Please tell me it was the guy in the suit.
Like Werewolf in
I hope they got
London.
the bear from Revenant. I hope the bear from Revenant was available.
The only good reason for that I can think of is that like they were using a stunt wolf and the stunt wolf got nutsy and Liam had to really like defend himself and he messed it up so badly that PETA would never acknowledge and give them clearance.
Liam's a bad dude. He's a real bad dude.
Yeah.
I gotta say.
Okay, so Mac, why don't you weigh in and tell us what some of your concerns are with the film or issues with the film that we haven't touched on before.
Well, to narrow it down, my first and foremost issue with episode 8 was they got me all worked up thinking that I was going to get to see Luke versus Kylo Ren, my all-time favorite character, Luke, against my sequel trilogy favorite character, Kylo Ren. And I was so excited. I was like, this is finally the scene where Kylo's going to cut down his master and become like the ultimate like bad guy. He's going to have all his stuff together. Like he's going to, he's going to just like rule. Basically he's going to become the Darth Vader of like episode 5, episode 6. Like he's going to stop the tantrums. He's going to be like real deal. People are going to be scared of him.
Mhm.
Like going into episode 9, like all my friends will be, think he's cool instead of, bagging on me for thinking he's cool. And then all of a sudden we get like Luke Skywalker like dodging lightsaber like slashes, and we don't even get a real duel. And then all that with the, lightsaber was able to pass through his body and all the whatever that transmission, like force transmission or whatever, dude.
Mhm.
I think the power, whatever that is, force transmission, force teleportation, whatever that is dope. But that scene, I wanted locking lightsabers. Like if you think about it, we almost went through that movie. Probably, now that I think about it, had the smallest amount of lightsaber to lightsaber combat. Like there was still, like sword to sword, or like when they were fighting Praetorian guards and stuff like that. But there was actual lightsaber to lightsaber barely at all in that movie. If you think about it, like the only movie that didn't have as much lightsaber dueling was Rogue One, and that was because there was no lightsaber until Darth at the end.
And it's also the
Actually,
only
I'm gonna call bullshit
sci-fi
on you.
series
I
that
think
has
you love-
lightsabers.
What is this, Cable? What? Well, actually, yeah, that's what the idea is. They're moving to a different time, and it's not about that anymore, which is awful because sometimes you do lose totems. It's terrible.
Yeah. But that was really saddening. And then just specific scenes, like I'm sure even though we've gotten that first scene with that we were just talking about with Phasma and Finn, that definitely should have been in the movie. And then I'm sure, like, little by little, they're going to start releasing more, and we'll be like, oh, well, what about this scene? And what about this
True.
scene?
Yeah.
Honestly, and another thing to touch on what Andrew said earlier is one of the biggest things that I was looking forward to going into episode 8 was seeing what that flashback was. Seeing how it showed, like the inners of Cloud City when Darth and Luke were fighting, and like how then like the rocks tumbled and it showed all the Knights of Ren and showed like, you know, Kylo Ren ended up like saving Rey, like when he stabbed that one dude like in the back. Like I wanted to see that whole flashback like in person. Like I wanted like the movie to go there. I wanted it to, you know, and it, like, and finally I'll stop talking because I'm the type of person that once you allow me to talk, I just go. But my final issue with that movie was at the very end of episode 7, when you look at Luke Skywalker's face, he is emotional. He is sad, like he's almost crying. And then at the beginning of episode 8, when we get the lightsaber has finally been handed over by Rey, and then he just flips it over his shoulder. Dude, I was pissed. I was so mad, and I had to pee at the time in the theater. I almost got up just to use the bathroom, just because I didn't want to. I wanted to take a break from the movie. Yeah, I was like,
no, I kind of get what Rian Johnson was going there. I think the problem is Rian Johnson was just trying so hard throughout this entire film to surprise us and to throw us curveballs. Like it was trying a little too hard because it was clear JJ set it up that her handing him the lightsaber was like a key opening his heart, and you could see. I mean, Mark Hamill in that like 3-second shot, the emotion he expressed was beautiful, and we waited 2 years, and then when we came back, it wasn't the same expression. It was literally a completely new expression, which means Ryan literally threw out JJ's plans.
I don't think so.
And you don't think so? No. Oh, that's what it feels in my heart. I don't know.
This is still a continuum. We have
record and said that, but it's true though. They've already gone on record and said that.
Well, you know,
Kathleen has.
I looked at it. I looked at the last scene, and then I saw the first scene, and I'm connecting it in my mind, and I go, "Wow, this is a lot of stuff to unpack." Mm-hmm. Because even for me, it's been a lifelong journey with these characters. So, like, this is a lot to unpack for me. You know, and then just sitting there with my kid and trying not to just freaking lose it, you know, with Carrie, it was just like, does this kid even really understand who Carrie Fisher is? Not really. Why am I bursting into tears? Why does it matter? And Mac, what you were saying about Kylo Ren and his, the poor thing. I really think that, yes, he is a self-destructive character. We have to have an element of chaos. Every bit of drama has to have an element of chaos. And when it comes from intense interpersonal pain, it can seem whiny, like it can with him. Yeah. Really whiny. But also, it can manifest in just this, like, panic attacks and manic rages and stuff like that. So, yeah, we really did want to see him sword fight with lightsabers. We wanted to see this, but we couldn't because Rage Baby couldn't grow up and encounter a situation appropriately.
Yeah, and even though technically that wasn't a saber battle, that was a great scene though. I love that sequence. Was. Yeah.
I know that I'm going to be playing that with lots of sets of toys.
Well, so that's the problem that's going on right now. Like Disney is 200 million short of what they predicted that they would get from the profits. They still made a killing, but they're 200 million short, and merchandising has dropped off precipitously. So that's because the hardcore Star Wars fans are not seeing the movie 5 times; they're seeing it twice, because the second time is just trying to wrap their head around it. And they're not going back 5-6 times. They're also not buying the merchandise because Rose's a cool character, but you just threw her in there. They're not going to buy a Rose, No, that's
not a thing.
Yeah,
that's not a thing. You know what, though? Here's what I would do. I would start with home furnishings because the fans that are still collecting things have all that stuff. So what we need is like a Millennium Falcon, like multiple cedar sofa couch.
Well, I beg to differ only because Mac is from a completely different generation than us.
I'm just saying.
And he grew up on the.
Our generation has financing, Alan. Mm-hmm. So grow with us.
Well, then you need to call Kathleen Kennedy and tell her what's up.
No,
Yeah.
No, we need to call Kathleen Kennedy and just let her know that she needs to let me be on the storyboard.
Okay.
Because if there's anybody that knows where Star Wars needs to go, it's my generation. So she just needs to bring a young mind that already has lived his entire 20 years of life on this planet, or at least the last 15 of them, trying to find as many scraps of Star Wars knowledge as possible. So she just
Kathleen, if you're listening, it's all about the Macadelic.
But the question, Macadelic, the question is, are you writing stuff? Are you making stuff?
Well, he's an actor.
not of my own, and
You always act best in your own work.
Yeah, a couple of my friends, I have some friends that are currently in school. I'm not enrolled right now. I'm working full time. But I have some friends who are in school who are theater majors who want to actually do something. They have some school projects coming up, so I might actually get my first real, like, big role or lots of screen time, like, in something. So that's exciting things to come in 2018.
That sounds good. Get out there, do the things, carry a lightsaber.
Hey, Andrew, what are you pouring there? Is it that bad? Is the Last Jedi that bad that you're drinking scotch out of a Jar Jar Binks mug?
Jar Jar. You have scotch. It's no fair. This is.
Oh Lord! No wonder Jar Jar's smiling.
He's not smiling.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump subjects really quick here.
Okay, what do you got?
Okay, no, I'm sorry. First, I wanted to get this in, Camille. To your point about the whole like myth arc thing. You know, I agree. This is a hero's journey. There are too many heroes in this story. You can't get a good Joseph Campbell inspired hero's journey if you have 4 different heroes. It's just too much. And then also, you're an actor. You're all actors, so we all know that the one thing people go to see, even if it's comedy, are high stakes. The stakes have to be high enough. So, if we find out that Luke Skywalker can't be killed in that supposedly lightsaber duel, then there's no stake. You know, he's buying time. That's cool. He's buying time. I get that. But the tension between those two characters is suddenly it's gone because Luke's life wasn't in danger for him.
Okay, but wasn't he just astral projecting, and B, wasn't the point to let Kylo blow out his rage before it actually hurt the people he was trying to protect?
I've never heard the blow out the rage.
They got away. There was a resolution to it.
Okay.
But that's the kind of kid you send out in the backyard and allow him to like break plates or punch trees or something like that. He needs gestalt.
Or kill dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, he wants to kill somebody real bad. You know, and Luke is like, if you want to kill somebody real bad, and we'll talk about it later, okay? Your mom's coming home at 6. Take the meatloaf out of the fridge.
I mean, you're kind of right, though, because Luke did have that, like, pedantic attitude towards him. Like, you silly little boy. And I liked that. I liked the way he treated him. Because, you know, it's like finally somebody, you know, kind of like put him in his place, you know, psychologically speaking or emotionally. But, yeah, I like that. It was fun.
I feel like Luke actually knew what to do with Kylo Ren, even though Kylo Ren is the bigger mess.
Well, he was his master, yeah.
What to do with Rey. He did not know what to do with her. She was so pure. She had such a straight connection to the energy. It turned him off completely, and it scared him. It's just like when a woman falls in love with a man, and she's so in love with him, and she wants to get married right away, and and she's giving that soul look, and he's like, oh my God, this is what I get for 2 beers and a shot of whiskey. Like, this is bad, guys. This is bad. It's too much for him. It's too much for him, and I think one of the reasons why it's too much for him is that she reminds him of who he used to be when he was a boy, and he was eager, and he wanted to know because he wanted to know.
He was eager, no doubt.
Right, exactly. And then the whole world exploded and he lost everybody that he loved. Do you really want to go through this, Rey? I don't want you to go through this. Mr. Miyagi makes you catch flies with chopsticks and wash on, wash off, right? It's not because you need that. It's because you need the discipline of doing it over and over again, the discipline of failing.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. if you take an assessment of Luke's character, I think the one thing that I felt was missing, which would indicate that he completely grew out of it, was his impatience. I didn't get a sense of impatience from Luke at all. Did you?
No.
A little bit?
Yeah, I mean, what I saw was the evolution of his impatience, which is frustrated because when you're impatient and you're a kid, you're looking forward and that's anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're looking back, that's regret. It's the same feeling, just one is future casting and one is memory. So I feel like, you know, he had that impatience. He couldn't do all the things he wanted to do, and so now all he has is regret. If he could only go back and do it, and that is a kind of impatience.
So he replaces impatience with regret.
Yeah.
So it wasn't.
I mean, that character has such a long journey. He really does need to have a very developed and nuanced arc.
I think they should just give Mark Hamill a spin-off movie.
There's nothing going on, yeah. You know, otherwise there's nothing going on. There's so many of these movies, and so much happens. But when you really break it down, it's like Empire Strikes Back is one of those movies where you look back and you're like, wait, like 3 things happened. Like, they go to lunch, they go to, you know, nothing really happens in that movie. It's
I
mostly...
disagree. I really disagree with that. Empire Strikes Back is not only known as the best sequel of Star Wars, but it's also known as one of the best sequels in film history, and like all genres, across all genres.
Hey, listen, I'm gonna tell you something, baby boo. When it came out, everybody talked about it just like it was The Last Jedi. They were like, it's gone, it's over, he's never gonna make another movie. This is the worst thing we've ever
There were a lot of critics. But I think the difference this time, there were more critics that liked this film than the fans that liked this film. And I feel like with Empire, it was a little bit different back then. And we also, it's kind of hard to judge. Well, it's hard to measure between the two time periods because now we have, you know, the interwebs and social media.
Right. Yeah. See,
I mean,
when I was a
did
kid,
we get a reveal though?
Ebert,
What reveal did we get in 8?
It's not a Siskel and Ebert world anymore.
Well, we got a semi-reveal. Because we got the actual story of what happened between Kylo and Luke. You know.
Oh.
But
did we though?
Oh, we kind of did.
Did we though?
Also, another important question. I don't feel like anyone's addressed this. Does anyone have problems with the fact that Star Wars films are doing flashbacks?
No.
Oh, no.
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 You know what was really cool?
Rebels.
Flashbacks in the second trilogy. Freaking what was that movie?
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
I'll tell you what was really killer that I enjoyed
Rebels.
about this movie. Rebels was really killer. We're about to get into that, Andrew. I'm waiting. I'm being patient. As much as like it's just like trying to like jump off my tongue. But one thing I really liked about the movie was how whenever she sat up on top of the rock and he was like just like reach out and she like reached out and like it showed like the grass and it showed like the cave and all that stuff. Like it showed like the flow of the Force kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they had never done that before and I thought that was pretty cool.
That was nice.
Yeah, I mean the editing was beautiful. And look, Rian Johnson's a good filmmaker, man. There's no doubt about that. You know, I think it's just the Star Wars super fans. Andrew, go ahead.
I think it's gonna be one of you.
Just jump in, dude. Go for it.
Give it a shot.
Not a fan. I'm not a fan.
Okay. So, before we get into Rebels, we have to at least touch on this briefly. The Han Solo movie that's coming out.
Dude.
Are you guys anti?
No,
I'll give it a chance. No, man. You gotta give it a chance.
Yeah.
I think it's ridiculous to say things if you haven't seen the movie. I think it's really hypocritical when people do pull that. You gotta see the movie first, man.
Okay, so I'm gonna drop some knowledge on all y'all that y'all are probably gonna think could not be hypocritical. But okay, so a couple years ago, this is before Childish Gambino, also known as Donald Glover, released that album that has the really popular song Redbone on it. If y'all listen to like newer music, like you know the song I'm talking about. Super duper catchy. I don't like people who invade two different spaces. Like, in my opinion, if you're an actor, you should focus all your work and all your time into being the best actor you can be. If you're a musician, you should put all your time into being the best musician you could be. I prefer to live my life as more of like a specialist rather than a Renaissance man. And I don't hate the Renaissance man, but like, I don't know. The Renaissance man kind of irks me. So when I found out that Donald Glover was going to be playing a young Lando Calrissian, I was pretty ticked off about it. I was also ticked off when I found out that he was going to be playing a significant comic book role in the Spider-Man Homecoming movie this past summer. But since I saw, I still had to go see the movie, even though he was in it, talking about Spider-Man. When I saw Spider-Man, I liked his performance. I thought it was good. So now I'm optimistic to see what he's going to do as Lando Calrissian. But that's my only question. If he's going to play that, if he can play that sly, really chill, you know, smooth talking role. If he can do that, I think.
Dude.
I think the guy who's
Let me
playing
take this.
Han, I got you. The guy who's playing Han, I think he's a good actor, and I think the rest of the cast is fine. If Donald Glover can pull off smooth talking Lando, then I think it'll be a good movie.
I think that he'll be the best part of the movie. Honestly, I think Donald Glover is dope. I think he's the most talented actor around in that age group right now. I mean, look at the awards he's pulled in the last year, man. I don't know if you watched Atlanta, but he writes that shit. He fucking acts in that, and it's clever, man. It's well done. You know, he's one of those people that can step in different realms and do good, man. Childish Gambino's dope, man. Like, honestly, man, I think he'll be the best part of the movie. He is actually a true fan. Lando Calrissian was the first action figure he ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he'll be fine. I think he'll kill it, dude. Donald Glover is the dude. He'll be all right. I think the other characters, I think it's gonna be hit or miss because they're not really fans. Like, all the interviews I've read with all the other actors, they're kind of just got the job. I think he's the only one who's actually like a Star Wars fan. So I think you're good with Lando.
Camille, were you
Everything else is a
surprised
question mark.
by his thinking that he would be good in the role, or?
Listen, guys, I hate to tell you this, but there isn't a black guy in America who doesn't have a Billy D. Williams impression. It's just not a thing. We're gonna be okay.
Samuel L. Jackson.
It's sexy, and it's about charisma. Remember that. It's about charisma.
Yep.
Anybody in the world can be multiply talented, like I happen to be, and Alan happens to be. You can't do musicals if you can't sing, dance, and act, boo-boo. So there's people who got lots of skills across lots of things, and I learned when I got an F in theater shop that that sucks and it brings your grade average down, but what I realized in the real world is that if you can stage manage, stitch a costume, do a wig, or throw on some face paint, you get paid for that. A lot of times you don't get paid for acting. So it's very important and very, very financially wise to put on a lot of hats. And this way, when you hate doing plays, you can turn around and be a stage manager and yell at a bunch of actors. Nice girl.
All right, Rebels, bring it on. You got this is out of my realm, so I'm gonna leave this to you guys.
Okay, Padawans, there's just one more thing I have to say. Remember, there's always a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Right?
Oh yeah, she just dropped it.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Andrew,
I just want to say before you get into Rebels, let me just say, I know like when Disney acquired the license, a lot of people were upset about it because, you know, obviously I think it's a good thing because there's a lot more projects, not only in film, but you get to see these stories are continued in a lot of different mediums. Like Clone Wars was dope, and Rebels, which we're about to talk about, this animated show, which is canon, is considered canon, is really cool, and it introduced some really interesting new things into the mythos that I think is pretty cool. The series finale just happened a couple weeks ago, and you know, I think overall, there's a lot of different avenues that the stories can be continued now. There's a lot more books now.
Cool.
You know, comic books, everything. I love it, man. I love it. All the fans, all the different ages, you know, they can explore it in different ways, and I love it.
Okay, Rebels.
What?
Sorry, buddy.
And Andrew and Mac, I know you guys wanted to kill it on Rebels.
Yeah, we're gonna
No,
pinball.
Go for it.
spoilers though. Can you do it without spoilers though?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, dude. If you had let me start, I just would have like been listing off some spoilers. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because this is gonna post tonight, so it's pretty brief. Since it
Well, like
ended.
It's brief.
for
Then
one.
you could do a
Like
whole
let's
show.
just say like time travel happens. I've never seen time travel happen in Star Wars before, but it definitely happened in one of the last episodes.
Yeah, dude. That was
Yeah.
sick.
Okay, now I'm gonna have to put
So,
spoiler alert at the beginning of this.
It's, yeah, so Rebels happens between Empire and Jedi, right?
3 and 4.
Yeah, it happens between 3 and 4. Sorry, and it's pretty cool. It fills in some gaps, and they bring in some like interesting characters. Like if you read the books like from the early '90s, like Thrawn, Grand Admiral Thrawn, he's in it. It's pretty cool from like the Empire. The dude, the blue skinned admiral.
Yeah.
He's pretty badass. Yeah, so they actually like gave him a character, and you get to see him beat some ass, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it's just good to see it. But man, the finale, it definitely it asked some questions that I think should be explored in the films. That just looking at with 8, how much the director had to use and how much he didn't use. He had this entire universe, and like he like basically unlimited resources, and he chose to keep it pretty closed up. Like I feel like Ryan didn't really use the resources that he could have.
Oh, but you know, in Ryan's defense, because he's got a lot of criticism, you know, for Superwoman Leia, and you know Yoda using Force lightning, or you know, not Force lightning, but you know, tapping into real lightning and bringing it into the real world. We're introducing all these new abilities, and I think that if it was Rian Johnson that brought time travel into the series, I bet you a lot of people would have been pissed.
Probably.
Yeah.
I think it depends how it was done, because how they did it on this was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Like,
I also agree with that. I think, honestly, the only guy the only person who really has like the command and can kind of like do whatever he wants in a way, or like gets away with almost like can do most of the experimenting, can try new things and like be innovative, is Dave Filoni, which was the executive producer for both Clone Wars with George Lucas and then Rebels by himself. And he just did so much through Clone Wars. I'm sure most of you have seen bits and pieces. I've watched it 2 times all the way through. The first time, like how they're released, the second time in chronological order. That was an amazing show. They did so many new things with that, with like the daughter, the son, and the father. Also, that ties in those 3 characters. If you've watched Clone Wars and saw those episodes with the stuff on Mortis, those characters are also revisited in the tail end of Rebels this last season. So that was really cool to see the 2, like what they're coining Filoniverse, like just kind of mesh together. That was really cool.
So Kathleen Kennedy is the president of Lucasfilms. Who's the creative director now then?
Well, I know for a fact that they have like a just kind of like a creative board. So Pablo Hidalgo and who are some other people? Kathleen's obviously on it. Whoever's directing or in the middle of producing a Star Wars movie is also on that. A few of the writers for comic books are on that, and then I think anybody who's currently working on a novel. So it's kind of a revolving door, but there's a few key members that stay on that board, but they basically all decide what's going to happen for each story, for each comic book, novel, TV series, movie, whatever. Like it's a board that decides all the decisions.
Well, considering what happened to Luke at the end, our assumption would be that he died and we will see him again as a Force ghost. But does it have to be that way, since we've broken so many some barriers of assumption along the way, that maybe he, like Mark Hamill said, maybe he transported to a nudist colony, another planet, he's taking some time off, and then he's going to come back?
I was about to say, what if in his isolation for so long, and just like basically, playing with the Force to see what he can make of it, and see, if he can stumble upon it, discover a new ability. What if he knows how to, or wait, before I say that, let me break this down. So there's two different kinds of Force. There's the living Force, and then there's the cosmic Force.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you die, you become part of the cosmic Force. What happens, or what if he knows now how to translate himself across that barrier? Like, there is no barrier. Like, he can be part of the living Force and be alive and be, tangible and physically there, or he can become part of the cosmic Force, and that's what allowed him to kind of, teleport himself, or portray himself.
Well, I guess as far as storytelling, and this is the problem with the fight with Kylo Ren, is that will the stakes ever be high enough if that's the case? I mean, his life has to be in danger in order for us to, sit at the edge of our seats, and get into the drama of the moment. But if he can just simply go, "Whoop, I'm a ghost. Whoop, I'm human again," then it kind of loses. Like, there has to be something that he has to lose in order for us to care more.
I think he lose. I think he did lose a tremendous amount of energy that would allow him to be in his physical body any longer, because he left it for so long.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying I know anything about the Force. I don't. But I would assume that if you use a tremendous amount of energy, you can't just create it. Like, that's part of the laws that govern this universe and our universe, is that energy can neither be destroyed. So it cannot be continuous. If he's expended that energy, it's gone. What does he have left? Mm-hmm. So, like Yoda did when Yoda took off at the end, and then became stronger, and Obi-Wan tried to hide, but then it turned out he was more attuned with himself. I think that these times of solitude are very important to people who are at a level of mastery. Certainly, athletes have that sometimes, scholars, religious people. And Jedi is presented to us as a kind of a religious order and also a martial arts order. And those are both orders that have traditions of solitude, where you're supposed to ruminate over all the things you've done, and maybe even forget your training, live as an aesthetic, eat nothing but rice for 2 years, stuff like that. So I think that was, his journey into the metaphysical, whatever. Maybe he did peyote, who knows? I'm just saying, I like that he could throw his body. I like that he could leave his body, and I was very curious to see where he would go next. And I also think that they were sort of implying, well, everybody else is dead. Sorry.
Well, but that's kind of sad. It's like a cop-out.
Well, no, not really. I mean, not joking aside. What I mean is, Han is dead, Leia is dead, Luke should be dead too. But you can't just do that. It has to be a cliffhanger.
Right. I think I would have much rather a cliffhanger. Which I think.
About his milking?
But it can still be.
Wait, about his what, Andrew?
Milking skills.
Honestly, I thought it was kind of corny, but it didn't bother me that much.
I know. I'm not sure. How much longer do we have, Alan?
As long as we want to go, but let's just do 10 more minutes max and try to squeeze in what we can.
3 things. 2 things about the movie and 1 topic that is still Star Wars, but it's something that I don't think all 3 of you know about, because you haven't said anything about it. We have, and the 3 of us in our group chat haven't talked about it this week in preparation for the show. 1, how are they going to dispose of Leia now? Is it going to happen in a novel? Yep. You just kind of left her alive, and now.
So sad.
Okay, Mac, let's pick up where you left off, and we'll try to wrap this up here.
Okay. So the first thing was that I don't know how they're going to end Leia. Whether I think the smartest route to do with that would not to be to do it in the movies. I think it would be best if they either do it in the next animated show that they're working on, because she was in the first or early second season of Star Wars Rebels as a teenager. So they could do that, and then I guess.
What's the next animated show gonna be? Do you know?
I know the next animated show is probably going to take place between episode 4 and 5, like you were saying, and be darker themed. But they still haven't released. There's limited information that's been released about that. Second thing, I forgot what the second thing is, because now I'm thinking about the third thing because we started talking about the show. So does anybody know that they have already announced and given permission for executive producer Jon Favreau to write a live-action Star Wars TV show?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I'm stupid hype about that. Like, I would love to be involved, whether I'm a tiny character or whether I'm the lead. I would love to do that.
What forms of media?
The media's kind of down on it because, for some reason, they're making it a racial and a sex-based thing. They're saying that it shouldn't be Jon Favreau in the driver's seat, even though he has such a good track record with Marvel projects and things like that. I feel like
he's a fanboy. He's a fan.
Yeah.
A fan.
And I feel like he'll take good care of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like he's definitely a good choice for a live-action TV show, especially because that is somewhere that is a certain space in the TV movie world that Star Wars has never, stepped. They've never been brave enough until now to
They tried in the 80s. They tried and failed miserably.
That's why my face looks like this. This has never been good. This has never been good.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was that, Andrew?
I think now is the chance they can do it, though.
Yeah.
With animation, it's a little easier to do like the space battle scenes, like those grand scale battles. It's a lot easier to do that with animation than live action. But I think it can be good, especially if they do it right. And
but now they have 3D
I think
animation.
the right people. It's all about getting the right showrunner at the end of the day.
Yeah. Another thing that I think would be a huge tip for one of the things that made, I don't think episode 7 would have been as good as it was had there not been so many or so much use of practical effects. Like,
right.
The practical effects, people love that about Star Wars, especially the original trilogy. So I feel like I'm fine without seeing dogfights and, constant space battles and stuff in this live action show if it's going to be high quality acting, number 1. Number 2, if there's practical effects. And number 3, if it's got a good story. Honestly, I'm big enough of a Star Wars fan that if it's got a good story, the characters are good, but, it might not be as entertaining, I can make myself watch it.
Yeah, but this is also going to be, I think, on Disney's new streaming channel, isn't it? It's going to be exclusive to that channel. And like Star Trek Discovery, they're using a lot of effects for that. It's because it's a paid for service, so they can afford to use the special effects that you need to have big battle scenes and whatnot.
Well, it's the same deal with Netflix, same type of thing.
Yeah.
It's, all these streaming services, they're starting to back their own projects. Like even MoviePass is doing it now. Like they started backing movies.
You're a big fan of MoviePass, right?
I've seen every movie that's come out. Ask me anything about it, man. I can give you reviews of every movie. Ugh.
I've never
top three best picture movies for me. Number 1, Get Out. Number 2, Phantom Thread. Number 3, Dunkirk. Those are my top 3 best picture nominees.
Really? Really?
Yeah.
I think Get Out got robbed, man. I mean, I'm glad he got best writer, but still.
You said which movie?
Get Out.
Okay.
I thought
Phantom
Get Out and
Thread
Phantom Thread were
#2.
great, and Call Me by Your
Number
Name.
3.
Yeah.
I'm actually sad to say that I haven't seen Get Out yet. I was actually very busy.
You're missing out, man. You're missing out.
I was
really good.
very busy young adult at the time that movie was released, so I never got around to seeing that. I never got around.
When you were so young.
Yes. But I will say I did go see Dunkirk. I saw it opening weekend, and I don't know if it's because I'm young. I feel like I'm very mature and I'm very intellectual for someone my age. But
I agree.
Dunkirk's minimalistic, the limited dialogue, stuff like that. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't constantly entertained. Like, I was constantly watching. I'm not saying I fell asleep or anything like that, but I don't know. I guess if you were going to do kind of the minimalistic scheme with that, at least it was a war movie, because I feel like that's the most appropriate place for it. But I didn't go see it again, put it that way.
Fair enough. War movies are tough, man. It's hard to do a war movie. And just the way that there's certain things that they've never done in war movies before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Camille, what do you think should have won Best Picture?
Get Out. 100%. Get Out.
Get Out, I guess. Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Not Shape of Water.
I haven't seen a movie in a really long time.
Shape of Water was okay. I'm just glad, and because that was like the favorite, and that movie was.
Camille, did you see Shape of Water?
What? No.
Yeah, that's alright.
Oh, okay. It's a good fairy tale. It's a good, like fairy tale sci-fi film, but I wouldn't put it at Best Picture. I just couldn't. All right, guys. So let's wrap this up. Do you have any just impending thoughts that you have to get out on this subject? Because we can do this again later when the solo film comes out, and we'll just do a much shorter version of it because we've covered a lot of ground. So if there's anything you feel like you need to hit on, and then we'll sign off.
About Rebels?
Anything. Star Wars. Yep.
I just think it's great that Star Wars is out on all these different types of media now,
Mm-hmm.
and it really comes down to who's running that project. Yeah, they're not all going to be good. I know a lot of people didn't like Rogue One. I loved Rogue One. I didn't like 8. It's one of those things that does that make me less of a fan? No, I'm still going to be a fan. I'll always be a fan of the franchise, and I'll go see everything they put out. And I'm not going to make up my mind about something until I actually go out and see it. And I would encourage everyone else to do the same.
Cool.
And everyone else, Clone Wars, that's on Netflix right now. Like it gets really good around season 2. They actually start realizing that they have an adult audience, and like that not all of their audience is kids.
Mm-hmm.
So they started introducing adult themes, and it's pretty good. It wraps up really well.
Nice. Anyone else?
I didn't get to throw my hat in the ring for Flick of the Year. I think that Gifted, if any of you saw that movie, it was starring Chris Evans and a little girl named McKenna Grace. He plays her uncle, I believe, if I remember, because the movie came out in like April or May of 2017, so it's been almost a year since I've seen it. But that was the first movie that, since I can remember being a teenager and thinking that, I have to be a little bit more conservative with my emotions because I'm a guy and I have to kind of be tough or whatever. That was the
Not
first.
true. Not true. Let it out, baby. Let it out.
Oh, I know it's not true. I'm very, very, my family is very open about, sharing emotions and stuff. But that was the first.
He is so Kylo Ren.
That was the first movie that I ever went to by myself that made me cry in the movie theater. Like, that movie resonated with me so long after I left that theater, man. That was, I was telling my grandmother, because my grandmother likes to watch all the movie awards and everything like that, and she's big on all the dramas and stuff. So I say, Grandma, you gotta go see this movie. She went and saw it with me a second time, and we were both sitting in the theater together crying. It was such a good movie.
I dare you all to watch Coco and not cry. You all need to watch the movie Coco. It won Best Animation and Best Song. There's no way that you can watch that movie and not cry. If you watch that movie and don't cry, you don't have a soul.
Okay. I'll let you know later where my soul is at.
It's great. It totally deserved to win.
All right, cool. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for this fantastic Star Wars, The Last Jedi, and Oscars apparently roundtable.
Go see Black Panther.
All right, yeah, Black Panther. Definitely gonna go see it. Yep. All right, guys. Peace and love. Thank you so much for joining.
Later. May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
Bye.
Remember, there's a difference between wisdom and knowledge. Okay.
Okay, thanks for tuning in, guys. Don't forget to like the page and follow us on Facebook. It's Paranormal Now Radio, and you can also follow us on Instagram at Paranormal Now or on Twitter at paranormal_now. All right, that's it. And until next time, live in the mystery.